Hello, in the last video we have made this application which performs the sum of the user's input, for example this, and in this video we're going to upgrade this application to perform complex arithmetic operations like the sum, multiplication, and also the division of numbers like such, and display the operation that was performed here and the result on top. So to do this, let's start with the main activity layout. Let's change the layout to have exactly this. So first, let's start with the numbers. So here we're gonna add a new column at the end. So here I'm gonna add duplicate this, it's btn multiplication. The text is x, and I'm going to add the style, which is this. I'm gonna copy this, and in the next row add the same thing, and here I have the division, so div, and we do the same here, minus, and the last one is equals. In this case we are going to change this, and here we're gonna add a comma, so let's add a new one. So here this and comma, I'm gonna remove this, and we're gonna move the plus element to a new row that we're gonna create here, table row. Gonna copy the same properties. We have our plus, and we're gonna create a new button, call it btn erase, and for the text we write erase, and here we're gonna click on Alt Enter and extract the string. This would add this value to our strings file.xml and add reference here. Alright, now we have our erase and our plus button. We can change the width of these buttons by adding a weight. So I'm gonna add weight 1 here and give the same to this one so that they are equal, and then I'm gonna go to 0 and do the same thing. Now our 0 has the weight of 1, which is 2 columns, and the rest is taken by the comma and equals. Alright, now our design looks good. The next step would be to configure these elements here in our main activity.java. So we have here btn mul and multiplication, btn division, btn erase, btn minus, and what else? Right, that sounds about it. So we added 1, 2, 3, and 4 buttons that are here. Scroll down here and add these. This dot btn minus equals find view by id r.id dot minus this dot btn division equals find view by id r.id dot division, this dot btn erase equals find view by id r.id dot division dot erase, sorry, and multiply. Alright, now that we have defined our buttons, let's configure the click listeners. So I'm just going to change this because we have our plus, and the action that is done by the button plus are going to be done by the other buttons. So I'm going to transform this to a method. So I'm gonna change this and add operation. Here it's a plus, and I'm gonna extract this method here, change the s to operation, and put it here. And now that it's referenced, I can remove this because it's a single line, and duplicate the line btn minus btn multiply btn div. Here I'm going to change this to this, multiply and minus. Alright, now we have our operations that are added. The next element is erase. So this dot btn erase dot set on click listener. Alright, here basically what we are going to do is to remove only one character or one operation at a time. So to do this, we'll need to get the last element. But first we need to check if there is nothing displayed or the text view is empty. If it's empty, then we don't need to do anything. So let's do this. String value equals this dot tv value dot get text to string. If value dot length equals to 0, then we do nothing, so return. If that's not the case, what we would do is we will check if the last element is an operation, and we said that for the operations we always add a space at the end, so we'll need to check if there is a space at the end. So if value that ends with a space, if that's the case, then this dot tv value dot set text, its value dot substring from the beginning until the length minus 3, which would remove basically all the last operation in our context. So if this is if the last element is an operation, if the last element is a character or a number, then we'll just need to change it. So here else, or else, what we're going to do is this dot tv value dot set text value dot substring from the beginning to value dot length minus 1. Alright, let's test this to see if we can add these operations and we can erase properly. So let's run the application. Give it some time to build. Alright, so here's our application. So we have our numbers here. We can erase, it's erasing only one character. If there is nothing happens. If we have an operation and a number, if we erase one, the number disappears. If we erase one again, the operation disappears, and you can see that we can write without a space. So it was properly removed. Clear still works because we did not change this. And now we have the comma that we did not define yet. So let's define this comma that will add a comma here. So in here, let's add this dot btn. Yeah, we need to add it here, but btn comma, forgot to add it here. Let's do the same here, and go back to our click listener, set on click listener, and then what we are going to do is this dot tv value dot append, and we're just going to add a dot. All right, let's run this again. And here's our application. So 21.5 plus 3. This is going to give us an integer or long, because we're not performing the operation on floats. Now the application just crashed because it's not taken as account, because in our model evaluation we evaluate based on longs, and the input was not actually a long value. So now we'll need to work on the equals operation so that we perform the evaluation of the input that was entered by the user. In our context, we're going to add a new function, so public static double evaluate with, it's going to be with priority string txt value. So basically here we could have complex operations, for example 3 plus 1 divided by 5 and multiplied by 4, for example, minus 2. So this has to be evaluated, and considering that the division and the multiplication have a priority, they will be calculated first. So this is what our method here should do. Alright, so this should only be triggered if the user input contains operations such as division or multiplication. If there is no division and there is no multiplication, there's only plus or minus, then we are going to call this method evaluate. In this context, you can see that this method only does the sum, but we'd like to upgrade this to perform the subtraction too. So let's start first by adding a check if the length of the input is empty, so that we can return 0. So if txt value dot length equals to 0, then we're going to return 0. If that's not the case, we are going to split, but we're not going to split on these. We're just going to split on space so that we separate between the numbers and the operations, and we're going to have a result that is of type double. And then what we are going to do is we're going to loop for I over this list dot length minus 1, and here we're going to start from 1. Basically we started from 1 here because we are going to loop through these elements, and the first element is 3, and what we want to do is we want to check this operation. So if this operation is plus, then we're going to add this to this. If the operation is minus, then we're going to add this this value, take this value and subtract it from this one. So to do the operation correctly, we need to have this as the first value of the result. So let's do that. Double that parse double, and we are going to get the first element of the list. Alright, now what we are going to do is if element or list of I dot equals, and if it's equals to minus, then we are going to results minus equals double dot parse double list of I plus 1. So in this context, if for example we are in this position and the operation is minus 1, we're going to take this value, which is the result that was calculated beforehand, and add a minus operation and subtract 21 from it. We're gonna do the same for the plus. So if it's plus here, we're gonna add the value, and at the end we're gonna return the result. Here we have an issue because the result is of type double and the method returns long. So let's change the return type of this method. All right, back to our evaluation with priority. What we are going to do here is we are going to check if the value ends with space, which means the last element is an operation. What we're going to do is we're gonna remove the last operation because it's not going to be relevant as there is no number afterwards. So this is like having 3 plus 1 multiplied and there is a space. So if that's the case, we're gonna remove this and we're only going to evaluate this element. So here equals to value dot substring from the start to txt value dot length minus 3 again. All right, and then we are going to call a method return or return, and we're going to evaluate with priority wait priority, and we're going to call the txt value. This is a new function that we're going to define here, and basically this is going to be a recursive function that will do the operation. For example, in this context, let me copy this and put it here. So in this context, what we are going to do is we're going to evaluate this, calculate it, and put the value here, and then move on. So if the first input is this, the next input would be 0.2, and then the next one would be 0.8, and when we have this, we're going to call this method because there is no multiplication or division here. All right, so let's configure this algorithm in our application. So the first thing would be to split the input on space so that we get the operations and the numbers. So elements here equals to value dot split on a space. Then we're gonna have a loop on these elements. So elements dot length minus 1. Same thing here, we're gonna start with the first element because the element at the index 0 is a number and the element at the index 1 is an operation, and we want to check that operation if it's multiplication or division. So here, if element of I dot equals multiplication, in this case what we are going to do is we are going to run the evaluation on this after calculating the results of the division here. So result equals to, so considering that in our case we split the results, so in this instance the list would be 3 plus 1 division 5 multiplication 4 minus and 2. So what we're going to do is we are going to calculate this and replace it in this list, and then keep this list as it is for the next step. So what we are going to do is keep this list as it is, join it in a string. So we're going to have something like 3 plus, and then we're going to have the value of the division, which is 0.2, and then it's this, and then we're going to have our other list, which is multiplication 4 minus and 2. So this is what we're going to do. So we are going to join the first part. So here join, I'm gonna call the method join list. We're going to join the elements from the beginning until I minus 1. In this case, we are going to join the first elements here, these first elements here, and then we're going to add a space. Then we're going to add the evaluation. In our case, it's double dot parse double the element at the position I minus 1. And then we're going to multiply this by double dot parse double element of I plus 1 plus 1. And then we're going to add another space, and then we are going to join list of elements from the position I plus 2 till the end, which is elements dot length minus 1. Let's keep it inclusive, so of length here. Alright, now that we have this, we are going to check if the first element is a space, because while joining we could have a space if the first operation is multiplication at the beginning. So here this, or result, if result that starts with a space, then result equals to results dot substring started from 1. If result that ends with a space, that means that the result, there is like an extra space at the end, so we should remove that. Result dot substring from 0 to result dot length minus 1. So basically this difference could be caused by our join list, because we're going to define a different logic for this. So let's create this method here, and it's between I and G. So this method is going to return string the join. So we're going to join based on a space, and the element that we're going to join is this. But the list is going to be split. So here dot sublist, and we're going to start it from I and finish on J. Alright, now that we have joined our list here, we have our result. We can return the evaluate with priority of that specific result. We can do the same thing for the multiplication, or the division, sorry. And here we're going to change this to a division, and now if there is a multiplication, it's going to be calculated and replaced and re-evaluated. So we're going to recall this to perform the same thing. If there is a division, we are going to perform the same thing. But if we go through all the loop and there is nothing, no multiplication and no division, what we are going to do is perform a simple evaluation, because in our context there is no priority. So here txt value, then remove this. Okay, now that we have our logic ready, what we are going to do now is to call this method in our main activity. But first let's change this return type to a double, and then here instead of calling evaluate, it's evaluate with priority. And let's rerun our application. Okay, let's do the same logic that we have tested with here. So it's 3 plus 1 divided by 5 multiplied by 4 and minus 2. The result should be 1.8, and let's see. It's an approximation, and in our case it's nearly 1.8. Alright, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to share them on the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.